What if I told you that somewhere in the infinite darkness of space, there exists something so massive, so incomprehensible, that it challenges everything we thought we knew about the universe? NASA's most advanced telescopes have detected something that defies all conventional explanations. This isn't a star, it isn't a black hole, and it certainly isn't a nebula. Before we dive into this mind-bending discovery, hit that subscribe button and comment below what you think could be lurking in the depths of space. Trust me, you'll want to follow along for this one. Deep in the constellation of Virgo, approximately 54 million light-years from Earth, scientists at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory noticed something unprecedented during a routine survey of distant galaxies. The infrared signatures were unlike anything in their extensive databases. The energy readings fluctuated in patterns that seemed almost rhythmic, almost deliberate. What they initially dismissed as instrument malfunction would soon become one of the most classified and controversial discoveries in astronomical history. The object in question spans an area equivalent to an entire galaxy. To put that into perspective, our Milky Way contains between 100 and 400 billion stars, stretches across 100,000 light-years, and this entity encompasses a comparable volume. But here's where things get truly bizarre. This massive structure doesn't behave like a galaxy. It doesn't rotate in predictable patterns. Its energy output varies in ways that violate our understanding of thermodynamics. And most disturbing of all, it appears to be moving with purpose. Dr. Sarah Chen, lead astrophysicist on the project, initially thought her team had discovered a new type of dark matter formation. Dark matter makes up approximately 85% of the universe's total mass, yet we've never directly observed it. We only know it exists because of its gravitational effects on visible matter. What her team was observing had mass, certainly, but it also had structure. Complex, intricate structure that resembled nothing in nature. The first indication that something was genuinely wrong came from the spectroscopic analysis. When astronomers study distant objects, they examine the light signatures to determine composition, temperature, and velocity. The light coming from this entity showed absorption lines that didn't match any known element or compound. There were patterns in the electromagnetic spectrum that suggested organized layers, almost like cellular membranes, but on a scale that made entire solar systems look like microscopic organisms. NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory picked up the next piece of the puzzle. X-ray emissions typically come from extremely hot gases, often found around black holes or in the aftermath of supernovae. This object emitted X-rays, but they pulsed. Not in the regular pattern of a pulsar, which are rotating neutron stars with consistent timing, but in irregular intervals that statistical analysis suggested were non-random. The probability of these patterns occurring naturally was calculated at less than 1 in 10 trillion. When news of the discovery began to leak within the scientific community, reactions ranged from skepticism to outright dismissal. Dr. James Whitmore, a veteran astronomer from the European Southern Observatory, publicly stated that the team must have made calculation errors. Galaxies don't move with intention. Cosmic structures don't exhibit purposeful behavior. But as more observatories turned their instruments toward the coordinates, the data became impossible to ignore. Every independent verification confirmed the original findings. The Hubble Space Telescope provided visual confirmation that sent chills through the research team. In the optical spectrum, the entity appeared as a massive diffuse cloud with an unusual luminosity. But when they applied filters to isolate specific wavelengths, structures emerged. Geometric patterns that repeated at different scales. Fractal-like formations that suggested self-organization. And at the center, something that looked disturbingly organic. The images were immediately classified, but not before several astronomers had already seen them. Radio telescopes across the globe detected another disturbing characteristic. The entity was emitting radio waves across multiple frequencies simultaneously. This, in itself, isn't unusual. Many cosmic phenomena produce radio emissions, but these signals contained information. Not random noise, not the predictable emissions from natural processes, but data. Complex, layered data that contained nested patterns within patterns. Cryptographers from the National Security Agency were quietly brought in to analyze the signals. Their conclusion remained classified, but insiders reported that the mathematicians looked shaken after their briefing. The Vatican Observatory, one of the oldest astronomical research institutions in the world, requested access to the data. Their involvement raised eyebrows, as the Catholic Church typically focuses on theoretical cosmology rather than observational astronomy of specific objects. Father Giuseppe Marino, director of the observatory, made a cryptic statement to the press about the need to expand our definition of life beyond terrestrial boundaries. When pressed for details, he declined further comment, citing respect for NASA's ongoing investigation. As months passed, the entity began exhibiting new behaviors. It appeared to be growing, not through the accretion of surrounding matter, but through some internal process. Regions within the structure brightened and dimmed in sequence, like neural activity in a brain. The comparison wasn't lost on the researchers. Dr. Chen assembled a team that included not just astrophysicists, but also neurobiologists, systems, theorists, and even philosophers, specializing in the nature of consciousness. The breakthrough came when a graduate student named Marcus Rodriguez applied network analysis algorithms originally, designed for mapping human brain connectivity. When he input the energy flow patterns observed in the entity, the results were staggering. The structure exhibited small world network properties, the same organizational principle found in biological neural networks. Information appeared to flow through specific pathways, with certain nodes acting as hubs that connected disparate regions. The entity, whatever it was, possessed an architecture remarkably similar to a nervous system. But could something the size of a galaxy actually be alive? Our definition of life typically includes several criteria, including organization, metabolism, growth, adaptation, response to stimuli, and reproduction. This entity checked almost every box. It was clearly organized with distinct structural hierarchies. It processed energy in complex ways that suggested metabolism. It was growing and changing over time, and most remarkably, it seemed to respond to its environment in ways that implied awareness. The question of consciousness became unavoidable. Human consciousness emerges from approximately 86 billion neurons, forming trillions of connections. This cosmic entity contains structures numbering in the hundreds of trillions, connected by energy pathways that spanned light years. If consciousness is an emergent property of sufficient complexity, as many neuroscientists believe, then what kind of awareness might arise from a structure millions of times more complex than the human brain? Recent discoveries in astrobiology have already expanded our concept of where life might exist. We've found extremophile bacteria thriving in conditions once thought uninhabitable. Subsurface oceans on moons like Europa and Enceladus might harbor entire ecosystems. Complex organic molecules have been detected in interstellar clouds. But those discoveries, revolutionary as they were, involved life at scales we could comprehend. This was different. This challenged not just our understanding of biology, but our fundamental assumptions about the nature of existence itself. The James Webb Space Telescope provided the most detailed images yet, and they were breathtaking. In infrared wavelengths, the entity glowed with intricate patterns that resembled nothing so much as a vast cosmic tapestry. There were regions of intense activity, others of relative calm. Streams of energy flowed between areas like blood through vessels. And most striking were the formations that observers couldn't help but interpret as features. Not faces in the human sense, but arrangements of matter and energy that conveyed something disturbingly familiar. Military implications were immediately apparent. If this entity possessed intelligence, could it communicate? Could it travel? Was it aware of humanity? A hastily convened panel of defense experts, scientists, and ethicists met behind closed doors. The consensus was troubling. If this being had existed for millions or billions of years, had traversed the cosmos, had observed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, then human concerns might be utterly irrelevant to it. We could be less significant than bacteria are to us. Alternative theories emerged trying to explain the observations without invoking the concept of a living cosmic entity. Perhaps it was an ancient megastructure built by a civilization so advanced that their technology was indistinguishable from biology. The idea of Dyson spheres, hypothetical megastructures that encompass stars to capture their energy, had been proposed decades ago. Could this be something similar, but far more advanced? A galaxy-spanning machine so old that it had begun to evolve, to adapt, to mimic the characteristics of life. Others suggested it might be a natural phenomenon we simply don't understand yet. The universe is full of surprises. Pulsars were once mistaken for alien beacons. Fast radio bursts baffled astronomers until natural explanations emerged. Perhaps this entity was the result of exotic physics, maybe involving dark energy or quantum field interactions at cosmic scales. The patterns might only appear organized due to our tendency to find meaning in complexity, a phenomenon called pareidolia. But the data kept accumulating, and each new observation made the mundane explanations less tenable. The entity had begun to change color in response to nearby supernovae, suggesting it could detect and react to events millions of light years away. It had altered its trajectory slightly, bending its path through space in ways that couldn't be explained by gravitational interactions alone. And most controversially, some researchers reported detecting what they described as attention. When multiple telescopes observed it simultaneously, its energy output patterns changed, as if it knew it was being watched. The philosophical implications were profound. Humanity had long wondered if we were alone in the universe. The discovery of microbial life on Mars or Europa would have been revolutionary. But this wasn't microbes. This was intelligence on a scale that made human civilization look like a brief flicker. Every religion, every philosophy, every assumption about humanity's place in the cosmos suddenly required re-examination. Were we significant? Were we even noticeable to such a being? Dr. Chen's team attempted communication. Using radio telescopes, they broadcast mathematical sequences, prime numbers, representations of physical constants, anything that might be recognized as intelligent signals. The response came 3 weeks later. The entity's radio emissions changed, incorporating the exact patterns they had sent, but modified in ways that suggested mathematical operations. It had received the message, processed it, and replied. The scientists sat in stunned silence as the realization hit them. They were having a conversation with something the size of a galaxy. The messages became more complex. The entity seemed to be teaching them its language, if language was even the right word. The transmissions contained geometric information, topological relationships, something that might have been music or mathematics or both simultaneously. Linguists and mathematicians worked around the clock trying to decipher meaning from the alien communications. Progress was slow, but patterns emerged. The entity appeared to be describing structures, perhaps explaining its own nature. One transmission stood out. It contained a sequence that, when properly interpreted, appeared to be coordinates. Not locations in three-dimensional space, but addresses in some higher dimensional framework. The mathematics involved topologies that human physicists were only beginning to explore. String theory predicts up to 11 dimensions. What if this entity existed partially in dimensions we couldn't perceive? What if what we were seeing was merely a shadow, a projection of something far stranger into our familiar three spatial dimensions? The implications for physics were staggering. If the entity could manipulate higher dimensions, it might explain how something so massive could move without violating the speed of light. It could be taking shortcuts through space-time, traversing cosmic distances through dimensional pathways we couldn't detect. The energy requirements would be immense, but something that processed the output of billions of stars might have energy to spare. Our understanding of the universe's fundamental structure might be as primitive as a medieval map of the world. Public disclosure became inevitable. Too many astronomers had observed the entity. Too many people had seen the classified briefings. The decision was made to release a carefully worded statement. NASA announced the discovery of an unusual astronomical object exhibiting complex organizational properties unlike anything previously observed. They avoided the word alive, avoided speculation about intelligence, but the implications were clear enough. The world reacted with predictable chaos. Religious leaders offered conflicting interpretations. Some saw it as proof of divine creation on a cosmic scale. Others declared it a test of faith. Scientists gave cautious interviews emphasizing the need for further study before drawing conclusions. Conspiracy theorists, predictably, claimed the government had known for years and suggested far more sinister scenarios. Social media exploded with theories, fears, hopes, and endless speculation about what it all meant. Meanwhile, the entity continued its mysterious existence. It moved slowly through intergalactic space, leaving a faint wake in the cosmic microwave background radiation. Smaller structures, possibly analogous to cells or organs, migrated through its vast body. Energy patterns flowed and changed in rhythms that suggested day cycles, though what constituted day and night for such a being remained unclear. It was alive, in whatever way something that massive could be alive. It was aware to whatever extent awareness was possible at that scale.